And welcome back to the Survive Scale Soar Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy. Just a quick reminder, this show comes in two formats. It's real talk, just me and the mic sharing with you what's happening in the world and how it can be applied as a lesson to your business. There's also success talks, and that's where I get to interview people at the top of their game in their respected industry. And today is one of those days. It's going to be a success talk. I've got a great guest on, Sam Lockett with Goosehead Insurance in the DFW area. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeremy. It's awesome to be here, man. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Sam's a great guy. I've known him for some time now. He's also got a unique perspective that I think he's going to bring to this talk on insurance today, being in the real estate industry as well. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. But tell me about what's going on at Goosehead. How are things going there?
Yeah, it's going great. I'm sure a lot of people are getting their renewal rates there for whether it's their home or auto insurance or what have you, and they're looking at it and like, what the heck is going on? Basically, like, I haven't had a claim. I haven't, there's nothing that's gone on that should make my rates be this high. And it's hitting everybody hard. I mean, market wide with insurance in the last, I would say, 8 to 10 months, we've seen probably a 40% increase, whether it's with renewal rates or just new business with insurance. So it's hitting everybody hard, and it's following inflation really close, and the rising cost of materials. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but it's really important, to do your due diligence and shop the market the right way. It can lead to a lot of problems down the road, monetarily. So business is good, but there's a lot of hurdles that you need to jump through sometimes, and it's important to have a knowledgeable agent or broker on your side when you're trying to acquire any kind of insurance.
Yeah, I think with anything in the world right now, they call it Bidenomics, right? I think with anything in the world, when we're looking at the rising cost of inflation and the rise in depression of wages, and just going to buy food, the amount went to Waterburger the other day, and for like the four of us, it was like $70 to eat at Waterburger. It just floors me the amount of cost. So to not expect the insurance to go up would be kind of naive. And so I think it's something that everybody's dealing with, but it's important that, like you said, to do that due diligence. I want to talk specifically today on the real estate transaction, because I think, there's this misunderstanding on at what point do you get insurance on the house. And so if I've got a real estate agent that's going out and working with a buyer, at what point should they contact their insurance agent?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Jeremy. Again, I have a unique perspective on this as well, because, as you know, I've been an agent with Ebby Halliday in South Lake for about 5 years now, and before I became an insurance broker as well, I was somewhat naive to all things insurance for the most part when it came to the home buying process. I usually thought that was something that the lender would handle, and looking back, I wish I had known what I know now. It would have made me as an agent, my knowledge would have reflected a lot better upon me to my buyers. And so that's something I really want to touch on. I think from the second that you get under contract, if you're a real estate agent, I think having a go-to broker for insurance is really important. I think that, sending your buyer, as soon as you get under contract, sending them, my way, to be able to shop the market and just get a binder in place to be able to provide their lender. It just checks that off the list. So, they don't get 10 days out from closing, and the lender goes, oh yeah, by the way, you're going to need a homeowner's policy. Waiting that long makes the policies more expensive. And, it could, I've seen it happen where when it's, whether it's DTI issues or what have you with the loan, it can totally dismantle a transaction, and you won't even get to the closing table, because with how high insurance rates are, especially in Texas, we're pretty much number one in premium price. It's up there. So I think when it comes to the current market, carriers are pulling out, adding restrictions, increasing daily rates daily. I think it's imperative when your client is under contract, you send them my way so I can get them set up ASAP, with the ever-changing market, especially when it comes to DTI, sending them as soon as they come under contract, it could be the difference between them closing or not, due to the rate increases, basically. So, and a misnomer that a lot of people have is, you're not under contract with an insurance policy, right? On for your home, for example, if you get under contract, you get a binder. 99% of the time, it's going to be paid via escrow, at closing, part of those closing costs. And so, even if that transaction doesn't work out, that policy can be canceled. It's not going to do anything negatively to you, your credit, or anything like that. And so, I think it's really important, from the second that you get under contract to just get that binder in place. And, that, say, 20-day difference between, you say your agent tells you to go, holler at Sam, right? And get a good policy in place for your new home. If you wait those 20 days, you never know. I mean, those rates could be $500, $1,000 more expensive, than what it would be at that moment. And that's the difference in being able to close or not for a lot of people. Especially with the interest rates they are today. People's buying power has decreased considerably since those 2.9% days, right? So, I really do think that, especially for a real estate agent to have that knowledge, to know, tell your buyer as soon as they get under contract, hey, you're going to need this. Let's check it off the list now so it doesn't cause any unnecessary stress down the road. There's nothing, you're not beholden to that contract at all, but it could make the difference, between you getting to the closing table or not.
Yeah, and I think there's this misunderstanding. A lot of real estate agents will kind of depend and lean on the lender. And I know that's part of when you're prospecting for your business is building those relationships with lenders, because a lot of times these buyers aren't even directed to an insurance agent by their realtor. So that again, they're getting it down the line, which could cost them more, could cost the transaction not to close.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And getting it early, you get a discount for getting an early quote, for one. And two, as I mentioned previously, with insurance companies, profit margins are pretty much razor thin right now. And we're seeing carriers pull out of areas left and right. Houston is a great example. Being close to the Gulf Coast, and just the rise in the rates there. I mean, those are changing on the daily. And you know, as an agent, a real estate agent myself, I wish I had known this from the get go. It reflects well upon the agent. It speaks to their knowledge, right, and makes them seem more competent right off the bat. To be able to know, have foresight to send their buyer, to an insurance broker, instead of, it's getting a homeowner's policy sounds a lot scarier than it actually is. And especially we all know how stressful the home buying process can be, and getting that checked off the list early, and being able to just lead that to have a smoother closing for you and your family or whoever is buying the house, right? I think it's real important, and it's something that is overlooked. And I want people to know that they can do that. It's better to get in early, than late. That's for sure. So.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't it make the real estate agent look more professional when they're like,
Uh-huh.
"Hey, here's my preferred contacts that you may already have a relationship with," and it just makes everything go smoother than being assigned somebody that you have no relationship with, and maybe the lender picks the insurance company, and you don't have a relationship with that insurance company, so you don't know what's going on, and that part of the transaction is just out there waiting to either make it across the finish line or not, but you don't have that relationship with them.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think a home buyer tends to have a more intimate relationship with their real estate agent than they would their lender, right? I think more time is spent face to face with the realtor. It's certainly a more intimate relationship right there, and I'm sure in my experience, in the home buying process, your realtor is recommending an inspector, and everything that you need down the line to to have a successful transaction. And I think, adding an insurance broker or agent to that list is something that should be the norm. And I think doing it right off the bat, it only can help. And the biggest, I mean, besides the savings that your client's going to have by doing that early, it's just the amount of stress that it takes off and having your lender just say, hey, oh yeah, by the way, you're going to need to do this. Call this person you do not know, and it can be just an added piece of stress that you don't need at that point, because buying a home can be one of the more stressful um, things that you do. I mean, it just comes with buying a house. I mean, it's a huge amount of money that people pay, and it's a really great experience. But having it as stress free as possible and as seamless as possible, and being able to get to that closing table and get the keys to your new house, I think I think that's so important, and somewhat understated when it comes to real estate agents and their knowledge in in that space of insurance, right? So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's professional. I think it does take the stress off the buyer. It is stressful. They say next to buying a home, death is the only thing that's more stressful. And so I think there's a lot of truth in that. And I want to dive though into like risk mitigation. And when people are shopping, and sometimes they'll look at rates, they'll be like, well, that one's a lot less expensive, so I'm going to go with that. What trouble may they be getting into?
Yeah. So, having somebody who, especially a broker who's licensed with many carriers and they can shop the home market for you. Me personally, I'm licensed with 42 carriers, right? You name it, the Travelers, Progressives, the Allstates of the world. I think, emphasizing to them, sometimes it's not all about saving money. The quality of coverage is very important. Um, for example, in the DFW area, that wind and hail deductible, right? It's something that is not normally explained, and to keep the price down low, I've seen a lot of instances where lenders will get quotes from a million different people, and just present that to. They're not an insurance agent, so the lender doesn't necessarily. I mean, they may, but they're not. That's not their forte, right? And there's been instances where somebody say, they'll have a quote that's a lot cheaper than the rest, right? That has, say, a 5% wind and hail deductible, right? And then the hailstorm rolls through the neighborhood and destroys your roof, and you're like, oh, it's okay, I have insurance. Well, you get the adjuster out there, and then you look at your declarations page and you see, oh, I have 5% wind and hail deductible. That's 5% of the dwelling limit on my insurance policy, which could be, if it's a $400,000 insure, if you have $400,000 in dwelling coverage, 5% of that, I mean, it can be financially devastating to people, right? And that's something that's overlooked. Um, I think having a good policy in place from the start um, ensures both the buyer and the realtor that they're prepared for any unexpected issues that may rise down the line, right? After you get the keys to that home, after you've worked so hard to get that home, and what it takes to get there, monetarily, the last thing you want to do is have your bank account emptied because of something happens, whether it's a fire or wind or hail or hurricane, whatever, and you getting hung out to dry because your coverage isn't what it should be, right?
Yeah, and I think it's really important to understand the policy, right? So, and I know you do a great job with that with your clients. You sit down, you cover what everything is and what it means, and I think that's important too, because a lot of people will go shop the insurance, not truly understand what it's covering. Something comes along, and then you're not covered.
Right, exactly. It's very important, explaining that line by line to them. Each coverage, from coverage A all the way down the line. There's a lot of little things that can make huge differences. I mean, one that comes to mind is, say, insurance companies and roofs. or, but whether it's the age of your roof, um, that's what they look at. I would say first and foremost, that's a huge linchpin on you, the coverage that you can get. Typically, I would say I'll give a situation here where there's a coverage. It's a piece of language there. It's either there's replacement cost for a roof, and there can be actual cash value, or sometimes it's called the roof services endorsement, and that basically means that if it doesn't say replacement cost, then if your roof gets destroyed by a storm, they're going to come out there and they're going to say, okay, your roof is X years old, say it's 6 to 8 years old. Um, they take away depreciation, basically, I would say 8 to 10% per year that of your roof's age. So you may only get 15% of what you need to replace your roof. And that can blindside some people. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that this is what I thought, my roof would be totally covered. That's an instance that comes up a lot, I think. And that comes down to, if you do that actual cash value endorsement on an insurance policy, yeah, it'll bring the premium down a few $100s, but down the line, you paying $40,000 instead. I mean, that can really hurt people and their families, to be able to provide for them. Other simple stuff like water backup coverage, um, or foundation coverage, stuff that's pretty nominal, on a monthly monetary basis when you're paying your premium. But yeah, like you said, it's real important just to have somebody that can explain those coverages line by line, and leave it up to that buyer, what they are comfortable with for their coverages, and so that they're aware right off the bat. They're not just signing an insurance policy and being like, okay, like we have a policy, we're going to be covered no matter what, because that's not the case. And especially, because these insurance companies' profit margins are so low, they're going to do everything they can to pay you the least amount of money as possible. And being able to hamstring the insurance company to be like, no, we're covered. They have no choice but to pay you out of what you're covered for, right? So it's a very important aspect of the home buying process. I think that's like I said, overlooked.
Yeah, and I think it goes back again to getting started early, so you have time to go through that and really truly understand, the type of policy you're setting yourself up for at closing.
Absolutely. And, there's a peace of mind involved there too. If when you have that immediate conversation, you're spreading that knowledge to the home buyer that they may not have known any of this, right? If it's a first time home buyer, they they don't know what the dwelling limit on their house is. They don't know how that's determined by the insurance company. We run a replacement cost estimator, and et cetera. And I think that them knowing right off the bat that they're going to be protected down the line for the biggest purchase they'll probably ever make, it speaks volumes, to their real estate agent for sure. His competency or her competency, and just their knowledge of the market and what to expect down the line. Because um, it's the horror stories that you hear about, people being financially devastated just for something as simple as a hailstorm rolling through, right? I mean, it's wild to see, and it's so easy to avoid that I want everybody to know that how important it is. And I know that price is, you know it's any savings right now is good savings, but there has to be some sort of balance between the quality of coverage and the price of that premium, because at the end of the day, it could really come to bite you in the butt. So
Yep, I'm going through that right now. So with our investment property, and we won't get into difference between residential and commercial policies. It's a commercial policy we're dealing with, and they were like, it would have been better if it just burnt down. So and it's they don't cover wind driven rain, and so that's an issue. And the mold was caused by the wind driven rain, so they're not going to cover that, and so it's all out of pocket. And so understanding those things is really important to make sure you're set up properly, or you can prepare yourself for when that type of event happens. And it's super important. And I think you do a great job with communicating. Like you're doing an excellent job today sharing with the audience, these different things that are really important and should be understood, especially on the real estate side, the realtor. And how important is communication in your business?
It's paramount, right? I mean, nothing gets done without good communication. I mean, it's just simple as that. It can the transaction is going to go south if you're not communicating. You miss one little detail, and that puts those buyers at risk to not get the home that they want. You don't they could have been searching for months, right? And they finally find their perfect home. And having the transaction fall through, 10 days out from closing and having to start from square one, is never fun for anybody, whether it's the lender, the realtor, the buyer, whoever. And being able to avoid that is just, I think it should be an automatic, right? I don't see why, pending some serious issues, whether it's with, the financing of the loan, whatever. I think that there's so many things that can be mitigated, um, that are really small that, just simple communication takes care of. And yeah, to your point, I mean, that's how important it is. I
Well,
think
and I think too, when you're in that business where people are calling you when things go wrong, right? Or or you're talking about renewal rates. So it's very important, I would think, to have highly developed communication skills in your business, because those conversations are not always the easiest, and you've got to find where everybody at the end of the call feels like they're being taken care of.
absolutely. And not having that conversation at all is can only hurt you down the line. Like I said, just having a lender say, "Oh, I got these four quotes from my insurance guy," and just saying, "Hey, pick one," right? And him not being or her not being a licensed insurance broker or agent, they can't go line by line and explain all that. So that is, I cannot overstate how important that is. Um, and again, speaking to the confidence of your realtor, at the beginning of my real estate career, I wish I had known all of this. It speaks highly to the confidence of your agent, who proactively are able to guide their clients and secure good insurance. It reflects their confidence and knowledge of the home buying process. So I think it's something that, I'm hoping we can get out to the masses here, Jeremy, because I think it's super important.
Well, I know there's a lot of people that listen to the show, and I think there's a lot of real estate agents that listen to the show, but there's also a lot of people out there that are home buyers that listen to the show, and I think it's really good information for everybody to know, so that you're not going blindly into the process. Because, like you'd mentioned, it's probably the biggest purchase you're going to make in your lifetime is your home, and you want to make sure that it's protected. While it's a home, it's also an investment, and that you're making by purchasing a home. So you're protecting your investment, which leads to retirement and everything else.
Everything. It sets the tone for your life, basically. Once you getting that buying your first home. I mean, I bought my first home in August of last year, and I going through that process, and knowing what goes on behind the scenes with all these little moving parts, from the lender to the title company, to ordering the appraisal, to getting your homeowner's policy, all of that. It's eye opening to see how uneducated the home buyers can be, and I think it's something that just can be avoided so easy, right? It's just simple communication. And I think for people to it's so valuable as a first time home buyer. If you have that knowledge, then you're gonna remember everything that when it comes to, you want to get an investment property, 5 years in the future from that, you're gonna know the ins and outs of what goes on behind an insurance policy, and the coverages that you need, and everything that's important there. So it's having that knowledge from the get go, instead of finding it out the hard way, in the event of a claim, is just something that is something that can be so easily avoided. And I'm really happy to be able to get the chance to say this, because it's something that, people don't really understand. And they're in getting it early, I know you're putting a lot of money down, as far as your closing costs, your down payment, what have you. You find a good broker, the best savings a lot of times is to bundle it with your auto policy, right? And that's something that is overlooked too. And that savings from your auto policy could bundling that, I mean, that could save you money at the closing table big time, thousands of dollars even in some cases. So I think that, um, having somebody who's competent and can walk through everything line by line with you, it can't be overstated how important it is, Jeremy.
Well, I think the lesson here for my real estate agents that are tuning in is build a relationship with a great insurance agent, just like Sam Lockett here with Goosehead Insurance in the DFW area, but you serve all over. You can tell us here in a second all the states you're also licensed in. But get connected, build that relationship, and be able to have that conversation with your client even before it might be part of the going through the buying process with them. You're sitting at the table and part of it is once we write a contract, one of the first things I'm going to have you do is reach out to an insurance agent.
Absolutely. And that, again, speaks to the knowledge of your agent right there from the get-go. If they're looking for, say you're doing a presentation for your buyers, right? You don't know if they're going to choose you or somebody else. That could be the linchpin that makes them choose you, because they could go talk to somebody else. They don't even bring that up. And if you had gone to talk to them and they had never brought it up, you wouldn't know. Right. And so I think, again, yeah, that's super important. And I just can't overstate it, Jeremy. It's especially in the climate now with the market, how expensive things are. It's pretty crazy to see the savings that people can have by doing it correctly. Instead of scrambling, having a last minute scramble to try to get to the closing table. And again, like I said, it's a lot scarier than it sounds to get homeowners insurance, right? It's a really straightforward process, and you're not beholden to in a contract to any insurance company. You can cancel and get out, at the drop of a hat. So there's very few things that can't be fixed there. And I want the masses to know. And if you're a real estate agent, um, again, it's saved me in multiple situations um, being able to refer, people to the proper insurance broker. Um, and so it helps all parties involved. The lender wants you to close, the title company wants you to close. I know the realtor wants you to close, and I know the buyers want to close too, first and foremost. So
The seller does too.
yeah,
Everybody wants to close.
the seller doesn't want to get stuff from closing. They chose this one offer out of the handful, and the transaction falls through, and they have to start from square one again. As the seller, right? And that can, as a buyer's agent, that could sour a relationship with that seller. You ever do a transaction with them down the line again, right?
Absolutely.
You could have an offer with another buyer down the line, and they could be in that pile of offers. And like, oh, I remember last year we had a transaction fall through with so and so, and I think it would be better if we just go with this other offer, even though it's not as good of an offer. Um, just because of a situation like that can arise from scrambling last minute to get things done, in the home buying process, especially on the insurance side of things. So
Awesome. And I think the second lesson, so the first lesson was start early. Second lesson is to find a great agent like Sam Lockett. So Sam, tell us how people can get a hold of you if they're looking to get a quote for their residential insurance. I know you do more than just residential. You do auto, you do them all. Tell us how they can contact you and what you offer.
yeah, absolutely. I'll do all personal lines. I also have a commercial team. So anything from home, auto, umbrella, life, flood, um, personal articles, policies, whether you have a giant gun collection, pretty much anything personal lines involved with insurance, I can take care of. And I'm licensed with over 40 carriers. I can shop the whole market for you all at once instead of you going to, as an individual, going to separate carriers one by one. you will spend days, searching, and it'll be impossible to, and because you're not an agent yourself, you won't be able to, you're not going to have somebody to really explain what each coverage is and how important it is. So, that's a little bit about what I do. Goosehead Insurance, we're the largest independent broker in Texas, and growing nationwide in all 50 states. I'm personally licensed in Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Arizona, Maryland, Missouri, North Carolina, Tennessee, Ohio, Colorado, Utah, and Virginia. So if there's
You
any
remembered
lenders,
all those, huh?
yeah, if there's any lenders out there that, I know lenders in Texas do business and all other states do. Um, to be able to contact me though, it's my email is samuel.lockett@goosehead.com. That's GOOSEHEAD.com. Goosehead, one word. I my website, let's see here. It's usually connected to my QR code here, but yeah, goosehead.com / Samuel Lockett is an easy way to get a quote too, real fast. But I want to thank you, Jeremy, for allowing me the opportunity here to kind of spread a little bit of knowledge. I hope that it can help, small business owners all over. I think it's real valuable to you and your business and to show your clients how knowledgeable you are in different spaces. I know as a realtor, your clients may not expect you to have this knowledge, and when you do, it just speaks volumes about you. And when it speaks volumes about you, that's going to lead to referrals down the line. They're gonna, those home buyers are everybody. Everybody lives somewhere and drives something, right? So I think the ample amount of referral opportunities that it can bring to whether you're an insurance broker, a lender, or a realtor is pretty incredible. So, yeah, no, I really appreciate the opportunity here, Jeremy. It's been great chatting.
Well, Sam, thank you for your time, and I know the audience has gotten several things out of our conversation today that's really going to help them, especially my real estate agents, do a better job and serve their clients at a much higher level now that they understand this process a little bit better. And Sam, I just want to thank you again for taking the time out today to share the information about the insurance industry, but also about your business and how people can connect with you and be able to shop their insurance and have it done by a professional. So thank you again.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. Hey, real quick, I know I didn't say this. The best way to probably get a hold of me is I'll throw my phone number on here. It's 24 hours a day you can get me. Any questions, and anybody has any needs at all, whether it's insurance or real estate, right? I have a lot of resources available to help. So 281-883-9308. Any time of the day you can get me there. I really appreciate it, Jeremy. This is awesome.
All right, until next time, onward and upward.